The funeral reception turned cruel when her husband publicly chose his mistress over his grieving wife. His family piled on. Guests recorded everything. Nobody realized Gabrielle had just inherited her father's $15 billion resort empire. The mansion they partied in, hers. Their jobs, hers. Their future. She controlled everything. The afternoon sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Sterling estate, casting long shadows across marble floors that had seen better days. 3 hours earlier, Gabrielle had buried her father. 3 hours earlier, she'd watched them lower the only person who ever truly loved her into the ground. And now she stood in the grand ballroom of his mansion, surrounded by people who couldn't wait for the morning to end so they could start counting money. She wore a simple black dress, no jewelry except for the silver locket hanging around her neck. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. Her hands trembled as she held a glass of water she hadn't touched. The reception was supposed to be a quiet gathering, a moment for family and close friends, to remember Robert Sterling, the man who built an empire from nothing. But quiet wasn't what she got. The double doors opened and her husband walked in. Andre didn't walk in alone, though. He had his arm wrapped around Candace, a woman 15 years younger than Gabrielle, wearing a red dress that screamed disrespect at a funeral reception. Candace worked in marketing at one of the Sterling resorts. Gabrielle had hired her 2 years ago. Big mistake. Andre smiled like he owned the place. He kissed Candace on the cheek right there in front of everyone, right there in front of his wife, who'd just buried her father. Phones came out immediately. Guests started recording. This was the kind of drama that went viral, and everyone in that room knew it. Gabrielle stood frozen near the window. She wanted to say something, wanted to scream, wanted to run. But grief had stolen her voice. All she could do was stand there and watch her marriage die in the same room where her father's memory was supposed to live. Andre's mother, Lorraine, walked over with a glass of champagne in her hand. Lorraine was the kind of woman who smiled while stabbing you in the back. She looked at Gabrielle and said loud enough for half the room to hear, "Why do you always look so miserable, Gabrielle? Even at a reception, you can't pull yourself together?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not the kind of laughter that comes from joy. The cruel kind. The kind that cuts. Andre's brothers, Trevor and Malik, stood nearby wearing expensive suits they probably couldn't afford. Trevor grinned and said, "That's just how she is. Always playing the victim. Always making everything about her feelings." Malik nodded. Even today, her father just died and she's still finding ways to bring the mood down. More laughter, more phones recording. Gabrielle felt her chest tighten. She looked at Andre, silently begging him to defend her, to say something, to remember the vows he made 8 years ago. But Andre just shrugged. Candace leaned into Andre and whispered something in his ear. Whatever she said made him smile. He kissed her again, longer this time, deeper. The kind of kiss meant to send a message. The message was clear. Gabrielle didn't matter anymore. Gabrielle tried to speak. Her lips moved, but nothing came out. She took a step forward and Andre raised his hand like he was stopping traffic. "Not today, Gabrielle," he said. His voice was cold, dismissive. "Let people enjoy themselves. Your father wouldn't want everyone walking around depressed." Lorraine lifted her champagne glass in agreement. "Exactly. Robert's gone, God rest his soul, but we still have to deal with you. Try to be pleasant for once." The room erupted in murmurs and uncomfortable laughter. Some guests looked away, embarrassed. Others kept recording, hoping to catch the moment Gabrielle finally broke down. But she didn't break. Not yet. Instead, she turned and walked towards the balcony. Behind her, she heard Candace say something that made everyone laugh again. She didn't catch the words, didn't need to. The laughter told her everything. As she reached the balcony doors, she noticed a man standing in the corner. Mr. Harrison, her father's lawyer. He was a tall man in his 60s with gray hair and kind eyes. He held a black leather folder against his chest and watched the scene unfold with a look that was half sadness, half something else, something that looked like anticipation. Their eyes met for a brief second. Mr. Harrison checked his watch and nodded slightly, like he was telling her to be patient. Gabrielle touched the silver locket around her neck, the last gift her father gave her before he died, and stepped outside. The balcony overlooked acres of perfectly maintained gardens. This estate, this massive property with its 20 bedrooms, an Olympic-sized pool and tennis courts, had been her father's pride. He'd built it with his own 2 hands, or at least with money he earned through hands that bled from hard work. Behind her, through the glass doors, she could see the party continuing. Andre had his arm around Candace. His family was laughing and drinking. Nobody seemed to remember why they were there. Nobody except Gabrielle. A gentle voice spoke behind her. "Mrs. Gabrielle, are you all right?" She turned to find Mrs. Williams, the head housekeeper who'd worked for her father for 20 years. Mrs. Williams was a woman in her 50s with warm brown skin and eyes that had seen everything. She carried a tray with a fresh glass of water. "I'm fine," Gabrielle whispered, but her voice cracked on the word fine. Mrs. Williams set the tray down and placed a gentle hand on Gabrielle's shoulder. "Your father was a good man, the best man I ever worked for, and he loved you more than anything in this world." Tears filled Gabrielle's eyes again. "I know. He's waiting for you," Mrs. Williams said softly. Gabrielle blinked. "What?" "Mr. Harrison. He's been waiting to speak with you privately. Your father left very specific instructions." Mrs. Williams glanced back at the party inside. "And I think now might be the right time." Gabrielle looked through the glass doors again. Andre was feeding Candace cake. His mother was holding court with other guests, probably talking about how difficult Gabrielle was. His brothers were taking selfies like they were at a club instead of a funeral reception. "Okay," Gabrielle said quietly. "Tell him I'll meet him in my father's study." Mrs. Williams nodded and disappeared back inside. Gabrielle stayed on the balcony for another moment, letting the cool breeze dry her tears. She touched the locket again and closed her eyes. Memories flooded back. Memories of a time before Andre, before the mansion, before everything got so complicated. She was 8 years old again, standing in a tiny apartment in Alabama. Her father was getting ready for work, putting on a janitor's uniform. He worked at a resort back then, cleaning rooms and scrubbing toilets while rich people looked through him like he was invisible. "Daddy, why do you work so hard?" young Gabrielle had asked. Robert Sterling knelt down to her level. His hands were rough and calloused, but his smile was warm. "Baby girl, I work hard so one day you won't have to. And I need you to remember something. Never let anyone make you feel small. You hear me? Quiet strength is real strength. The loudest person in the room isn't always the strongest." Young Gabrielle had nodded, not fully understanding, but trusting every word. Her father kissed her forehead and handed her the silver locket. "This is for you. Inside is a picture of me and you. Whenever you feel alone, open it and remember I'm always with you." That was 25 years ago. Her father had kept his promise. He worked 3 jobs, saved every penny, bought one small motel, then another, then another. He barely slept for 20 years, building sterling global resorts from absolute nothing. 50 luxury properties across 15 countries, $15 billion. All of it earned through sweat and sacrifice and a refusal to quit. Her mother had died when Gabrielle was 10. Cancer took her fast. After that, it was just Gabrielle and her father against the world. He raised her alone, taught her everything about business, about dignity, about standing tall even when life tried to knock you down. When Gabrielle met Andre 8 years ago at a hotel management conference, she thought she'd found someone who understood that world. Andre was working as a sales manager, charming and ambitious. He seemed kind back then, seemed supportive. He said all the right things, made all the right promises. Her father had doubts. Robert Sterling could read people, and something about Andre didn't sit right with him. But he told Gabrielle, "If he makes you happy, I'll trust your choice. Just promise me you'll never lose yourself trying to keep someone else." She married Andre within a year. Looking back now, she realized how fast everything moved. How Andre rushed the engagement, rushed the wedding, rushed joining her father's company. He became a regional director within 2 years. Her father gave him that position because Gabrielle asked, because she believed in her husband. But Andre changed. Slowly at first, then all at once. He became colder, more distant. He started working late, started traveling without her, started looking at her like she was an obligation instead of a partner. When Candace joined the company, Gabrielle noticed the way Andre's eyes followed her. She tried to ignore it, tried to fix their marriage, tried to be better. Andre blamed her for everything. Too boring, he said. Too serious, too focused on work. He made her feel like their failing marriage was entirely her fault. 6 months ago, when her father was diagnosed with late-stage cancer, Gabrielle moved back to the estate to care for him. Andre stayed in the city, claiming work obligations. He visited maybe twice in 6 months. The man couldn't spare time for his dying father-in-law, but he had plenty of time for Candace. Those final 6 months with her father were precious. Robert Sterling knew he was dying. He spent hours telling Gabrielle stories about building the business, about the people who helped him and the people who tried to destroy him. He talked about strength and legacy and the importance of knowing your worth. One night, 2 weeks before he died, he held Gabrielle's hand and said, "Baby girl, I need you to promise me something. When I'm gone, don't let anyone break you. You're stronger than you know. Stronger than I ever was. And everything I built for you, not for Andre, not for anyone else, for you." Gabrielle had cried and promised. Her father died peacefully 2 days before the funeral, holding her hand, telling her he was proud of her. She hadn't read the will yet, didn't have the strength. Mr. Harrison said there was time, said her father had left detailed instructions that needed to be followed exactly. But Gabrielle was drowning in grief. She couldn't think about money or business or any of it. Until today. Until Andre brought his mistress to her father's funeral reception and humiliated her in front of everyone. Now, standing in her father's study, Gabrielle felt something shift inside her. The study still smelled like him. Cigars and old books and expensive cologne. His desk was exactly as he left it, papers neatly stacked. Photos of Gabrielle at different ages lined the walls. Mr. Harrison entered quietly and closed the door behind him. He set the black leather folder on the desk and looked at Gabrielle with those kind eyes. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said. "Your father was an extraordinary man." "Thank you," Gabrielle whispered. "I know this is difficult timing, but your father was very specific about when this conversation should happen." Mr. Harrison opened the folder. "He wanted me to wait until after the reception started. He wanted to see how people behaved when they thought you were at your lowest." Gabrielle felt her heart skip. "What do you mean?" Mr. Harrison pulled out several documents. "Your father spent the last year of his life preparing for this moment. He knew he was dying, and he knew exactly what would happen when he was gone." "I don't understand." "He knew Andre was unfaithful. He had proof. Photos, emails, financial records. He knew about Candace." Mr. Harrison paused. "He also knew Andre and his family would try to take everything from you the moment he died." Tears filled Gabrielle's eyes again, but these were different tears. Angry tears. Mr. Harrison continued, "Your father restructured his entire estate 6 months ago. He made very specific arrangements, and he asked me to record a message for you, to be played at the formal will reading, which is about to happen." "Will reading? Now?" "Your father's instructions were clear. The will must be read publicly in front of everyone at the reception, exactly 3 hours after the burial." Mr. Harrison checked his watch. "Which is in about 5 minutes. Gabrielle's hands shook. "What's in the will?" Mr. Harrison smiled, and for the first time that day, Gabrielle saw something that looked like hope. "Everything you deserve. Everything your father wanted you to have. And nothing for the people who never respected you. Assessed progress and calculated remaining word count needed. I'm making good progress. I need to continue the story through the will reading, the public exposure, the karma, and the ending. Let me keep the natural flow going and aim for the 6,800 to 7,000 word target. I'm probably around 2,400 words right now, so I need about 4,400 to 4,600 more words to hit the target." 5 minutes later, the main hall fell silent. Mr. Harrison had made an announcement that there would be a formal reading of Robert Sterling's last will and testament. By law, he said, all family members and certain guests needed to be present. Andre looked annoyed. He sat in the front row with Candace practically in his lap. Lorraine sat beside them, already calculating her share in her head. Trevor and Malik sat behind them, whispering and grinning like this was all a formality before they got rich. The other guests filled in the remaining seats. Some looked uncomfortable, others looked curious. Everyone had their phones ready. Gabrielle entered last. She'd washed her face, fixed her hair, and put on the locket where everyone could see it. She sat in the back row, away from Andre and his family. Mr. Harrison stood at the front of the room, beside a large screen. He held a remote control in one hand and the leather folder in the other. "Thank you all for gathering," Mr. Harrison began. His voice was formal, professional. "Robert Sterling left very specific instructions for how this will should be presented. Before I read the legal documents, he asked that I play a video message he recorded 1 month before his death." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Andre shifted in his seat. Lorraine leaned forward. Mr. Harrison pressed a button and the screen lit up. Robert Sterling appeared on the screen. He was thinner than most people remembered, the cancer eating away at him, but his eyes were clear and sharp. He sat in his study, the same room where Gabrielle had just spoken with Mr. Harrison. "If you're watching this," Robert said from the screen, his voice strong despite his condition, "then I'm gone, and I'm okay with that. I lived a full life, built something from nothing. Loved my daughter more than words can say." He paused and looked directly into the camera. "But before we get to the distribution of my estate, I need to say some things. Things I held back while I was alive because I wanted to see how people would behave when they thought I couldn't see them anymore." The room went dead silent. Every phone stopped recording. Every whisper ceased. Robert continued. "I built Sterling Global Resorts over 30 years. Started as a janitor making minimum wage. Bought my first motel with money I saved by working 3 jobs and eating 1 meal a day. I expanded to 50 luxury properties in 15 countries. The company is currently valued at $15 billion. Gasps filled the room. Even people who knew Robert was wealthy didn't realize the full extent. "I built this empire for one reason," Robert said, his voice getting emotional. "For my daughter Gabrielle, my baby girl who helped me clean motel rooms when she was just 10 years old, who stood by me when her mother died, who never asked for anything except my love and my time." On screen, Robert's jaw tightened, and I watched for 8 years as her husband treated her like garbage. I watched Andre use my daughter to get into my company. I watched him climb the ladder on her back. I watched him cheat on her with a woman young enough to be his daughter. Candace's face went pale. Andre sat up straight, suddenly very alert. "I have proof," Robert said calmly. "Photos of Andre and Candace together in hotel rooms that I own. Emails where they discuss their affair in detail. Financial records showing Andre embezzling money from my company to buy gifts for his mistress." Andre stood up. "This is ridiculous. Turn it off." Mr. Harrison didn't move. The video kept playing. Robert looked into the camera with eyes full of disappointment. "I also watched Andre's family. Lorraine, who called my daughter weak and pathetic behind her back. Trevor and Malik, who made jokes about Gabrielle not being smart enough to run a business. I watched all of you use my daughter for access to my money while treating her like she was worthless." Lorraine's champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. "So here's what's going to happen," Robert said. "I, Robert Sterling, being of sound mind and body, leave the entirety of my estate to my daughter, Gabrielle Sterling, 100% ownership of Sterling Global Resorts. Every property, every account, every asset, this estate you're sitting in right now, all of it, hers alone." The room exploded. People shouted. Andre yelled. Lorraine screamed. Mr. Harrison raised his hand for silence, but nobody listened. Robert's voice on the video grew louder. "To my son-in-law, Andre, I leave nothing. You showed me exactly who you are. A user, a cheater, a man with no honor. You signed a prenuptial agreement 8 years ago that was ironclad. You have no claim to my daughter's inheritance. 0. Andre's face turned red. He looked at Candace, who was already backing away from him, her eyes wide with panic. "To Lorraine, Trevor, and Malik," Robert continued, "you get nothing. You work at my resorts. You collect paychecks signed by my company, but those jobs aren't guaranteed. That's up to Gabrielle now, and based on how you treated her, I wouldn't hold my breath." Robert leaned closer to the camera. "I'm not doing this to be cruel. I'm doing this to give my daughter what she deserves: power, freedom, and the ability to choose who stays in her life and who gets cut out. She's been too kind, too forgiving, too willing to see the best in people who showed her their worst." The video showed Robert's eyes getting wet. "Baby girl, if you're watching this, I need you to hear me one last time. You are not weak. You are not too emotional. You are not a disgrace. You are my greatest achievement. Everything I built, so you could stand on a foundation strong enough to hold you when life tried to knock you down. Tears streamed down Gabrielle's face. In the back row, away from everyone, she pressed her hand to the locket. "Don't let them break you," Robert said. "Don't let them make you small. You were built to build empires, not beg for scraps. So take what's yours. Run my company better than I ever could, and cut out anyone who doesn't deserve to be in your life." Robert smiled through his own tears. "I love you, baby girl, forever and always. Now go show them what a sterling woman can do." The screen went black. The room stayed silent for maybe 5 seconds. Then chaos erupted. Gabrielle stood up slowly. Every eye in the room turned to her. She was no longer the broken woman who walked in 3 hours ago. Something had shifted. Her father's words had awakened something inside her that had been sleeping too long. Mr. Harrison approached her with the ownership documents. "Mrs. Gabrielle Sterling, as executor of your father's estate, I'm pleased to present you with full ownership of Sterling Global Resorts, all associated properties and all financial assets, as detailed in these documents." He handed her a folder. She took it with steady hands. Andre pushed through the crowd toward her. "This is insane! I'm your husband! You can't just—" Gabrielle raised her hand the same way Andre had raised his earlier. He stopped talking immediately. "This mansion," Gabrielle said, her voice clear and strong, "mine. The 50 resorts worldwide, including the 15 where your family collects paychecks, mine. Every bank account, every investment, every single asset my father built, mine." She pulled out her phone and held it up. "I also have something else. This phone has been recording for the past 3 hours. Every insult, every moment of disrespect. You calling me a disgrace at my father's funeral. You kissing your mistress in my family's home. Your mother calling me pathetic. Your brothers making jokes about my grief." Andre's face went white. "Gabrielle, please, I'm not finished." She turned to Candace, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "You work for me, Candace. Well, you did. Effective immediately, you're fired. Security will escort you from the property. Don't ever step foot in one of my resorts again." Candace opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. 2 security guards appeared and gestured for her to follow them. Gabrielle turned to Lorraine, Trevor, and Malik. "You all have positions at Sterling Resorts. Regional managers, if I remember correctly, making 6-figure salaries, living in company housing, driving company cars." Lorraine stood up, her voice shaking. "Gabrielle, sweetheart, we didn't mean any of those things. We were just—" "You called me a disgrace at my father's funeral," Gabrielle interrupted. "You laughed when your son humiliated me. You made plans to contest this will before you even knew what was in it." She looked at all 3 of them. "You're fired, all of you, effective immediately. You have 48 hours to vacate your company housing." Trevor jumped up. "You can't do that. We have contracts." Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Actually, employment at Sterling Global Resorts is at will. Mrs. Sterling can terminate anyone for any reason, as long as it's not discriminatory, and I don't think disrespect and conspiracy constitute a protected class." Malik tried a different approach. "Gabrielle, we're family. Your father would want—" "My father left me a video explaining exactly what he wanted," Gabrielle said. "He wanted me to stop letting people use me. He wanted me to understand my worth, and he wanted me to cut out anyone who didn't respect me." She looked at Andre's entire family. "That's you, all of you." Andre grabbed her arm. "Baby, listen to me. I made mistakes, okay? I messed up. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can... She pulled her arm away. We're done, Andre. I want a divorce. And before you start talking about splitting assets, remember the prenup you signed. The one my father insisted on. The one you complained about but signed anyway because you wanted access to his company. Andre's lawyer voice kicked in. Prenups can be challenged. I'll fight this. Mr. Harrison stepped forward again. Mr. Andre, I drafted that prenuptial agreement myself. It's been reviewed by 3 different law firms. It's completely ironclad. You have no claim to Mrs. Sterling's inheritance or any assets acquired during the marriage through her father's estate. The only thing you're entitled to is whatever you brought into the marriage, which according to these records was $17,000 in credit card debt. The room gasped. Some people tried to hide smiles. Andre's face crumbled. He looked at Candace, who was being escorted out by security. Candace, wait! She didn't even look back. Andre turned back to Gabrielle, desperation replacing arrogance. Please, don't do this. I love you. You love my father's money, Gabrielle said quietly. You never loved me, and honestly, I'm not sure I ever loved you either. I loved the idea of you, the man you pretended to be. But that man doesn't exist. Mr. Harrison pulled out another document. There's one more thing, Mr. Andre. During the process of cataloging Mr. Sterling's business records, we discovered significant financial irregularities tied to your expense accounts and project budgets. Over the past 2 years, approximately $3 million has been misappropriated. Andre's eyes went wide. That's not, we have receipts, bank transfers, and credit card statements. The money was used to purchase jewelry, cars, and luxury vacations for Candace. Mr. Harrison gestured toward the door. The police are waiting outside. They have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement, fraud, and theft. The room went completely silent. Andre looked around like a trapped animal. His mother was crying. His brothers were backing toward the exit. The guests were recording everything again, phones held high. 2 police officers entered the room. One of them said, Andre Johnson, you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. They put handcuffs on him right there in the main hall of the Sterling estate. Andre looked at Gabrielle one last time, searching for mercy in her eyes. He found none. As they led him away, Lorraine ran after him. My baby! You can't take my baby! Trevor and Malik followed, shouting about lawyers and rights and injustice. Their voices faded as they left the property. The guests who remained sat in stunned silence. Gabrielle stood at the front of the room, the ownership documents in her hands, her father's locket around her neck. Mr. Harrison addressed the remaining people. This concludes the formal will reading. Mrs. Sterling has requested privacy. Please exit the estate in an orderly fashion. Thank you. People filed out quietly, still recording, still whispering, still trying to process what they'd just witnessed. When the room was finally empty, except for Gabrielle and Mr. Harrison, she sat down in her father's chair and let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Are you all right? Mr. Harrison asked gently. Gabrielle touched the locket. I think so. Is that really true about Andre embezzling money? Every word. Your father discovered it 4 months ago. He documented everything. He was going to confront Andre, but then his health declined rapidly. He told me to wait until after his death, until after the will reading. He wanted Andre to face consequences without being able to manipulate you into forgiving him. My father thought of everything. He loved you, and he knew you were stronger than you believed. Mr. Harrison placed a hand on her shoulder. What you did today took courage. Not everyone could stand up to their entire family like that. Gabrielle smiled sadly. They weren't my family. Not really. My father was my family and he's gone. But his legacy lives on through you. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. The video of Andre's arrest went viral within hours. Every major news outlet picked up the story. Billionaire heiress exposes cheating husband at funeral. The headlines wrote themselves. Andre's trial was quick. With the evidence Robert Sterling had collected, he didn't have much of a defense. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for embezzlement and fraud. His lawyers tried to negotiate, tried to reduce the sentence, but the judge wasn't having it. Candace disappeared from social media completely. Gabrielle heard through the grapevine that she'd married some tech investor within 3 months of Andre's arrest. Some people never changed. Lorraine lost everything. Without her company salary and housing, she couldn't maintain her lifestyle. Her friends abandoned her. Her social clubs revoked her memberships. Last Gabrielle heard, Lorraine was living in a small apartment in Florida, barely getting by on Social Security. Trevor and Malik tried to start their own business ventures. Both failed within months. Turned out they weren't nearly as smart as they thought they were. They'd been living off Sterling money for so long they'd forgotten how to actually work. As for Gabrielle, she stepped into her father's role as CEO of Sterling Global Resorts. The board of directors was skeptical at first. A grieving daughter with no executive experience running a $15 billion company. They had doubts, but Gabrielle proved them wrong. She'd spent her entire life learning from her father. She knew the business inside and out. She expanded into 15 new countries within 6 months. She modernized the resort experience, as focusing on luxury and sustainability. She treated her employees with respect, paid them well, and created a company culture built on dignity instead of fear. Forbes named her one of the top hospitality CEOs in the world. Fortune magazine did a feature article about her rise from grieving widow to powerful executive. She gave interviews where she talked about her father's legacy, about standing up to people who underestimated her, about finding strength in the darkest moments. But despite all the success, despite all the recognition, the moment that mattered most to Gabrielle happened exactly 1 year after her father's death. She stood at his grave on a quiet Sunday morning. The cemetery was empty except for her and the birds singing in the trees. She placed fresh flowers on the headstone, white roses, his favorite. "Hi, Daddy," she whispered. "I know it's been a year. I'm sorry I don't visit more often. Work has been crazy, but I think you'd understand." She sat down on the grass, not caring that her expensive dress would get dirty. "I did what you asked. I found my strength. I stopped letting people make me small. The company is doing better than ever. We just signed deals in Japan and Australia. You would have loved that." Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled through them. "I miss you every single day. Some mornings I wake up and forget you're gone. I reach for my phone to call you and then I remember." She wiped her eyes. "But I feel you with me, especially when I'm in the office making big decisions. I hear your voice telling me to trust my gut, to be fair but firm, to never forget where I came from." She touched the locket around her neck and opened it for the first time in months. Inside was the photo of her and her father from when she was 8 years old. Both of them smiling, both of them happy, both of them believing that anything was possible. But there was something else in the locket, a tiny piece of folded paper she'd never noticed before. Her hands trembled as she pulled it out and unfolded it. Her father's handwriting, small and careful. When they try to break you, remember, you were built to build empires. Gabrielle pressed the note to her chest and cried. Not sad tears, grateful tears. Her father had left her one last message, hidden in the locket he gave her when she was 8 years old. He'd been preparing her for this moment her entire life. She folded the note carefully and put it back in the locket. Then she stood up, brushed the grass off her dress, and took one last look at the headstone. Thank you, Daddy, for everything, for believing in me when nobody else did, for protecting me even after you were gone, for teaching me that quiet strength is real strength. She touched the headstone. I promise I'll make you proud, every single day. She walked back to her car where her driver was waiting. As they drove away from the cemetery, Gabrielle looked out the window at the city her father loved, the city where he built his empire from nothing, the city where she would continue his legacy. Her phone buzzed. An email from the board of directors. They wanted to discuss expanding into Europe. Another email from her legal team. Andre was trying to appeal his sentence. Another email from her assistant. Forbes wanted another interview. Gabrielle smiled. A year ago she was broken. A year ago she let people walk all over her. A year ago she didn't believe in her own worth. But that was a year ago. That was a different Gabrielle. That was the woman who let Andre humiliate her, who let his family disrespect her, who let the world convince her she was weak. Now she was the woman her father raised her to be, strong, powerful, unbreakable. She arrived at Sterling Global Headquarters an hour later. The building was 50 stories of glass and steel in the heart of downtown. Her father's name was etched above the entrance in gold letters. As she walked through the lobby, employees greeted her with genuine respect. Good morning, Mrs. Sterling. Welcome back, Mrs. Sterling. Great to see you, Mrs. Sterling. She smiled at each one, remembering their names, asking about their families, treating them like human beings instead of servants. That was one thing she'd learned from her father. The people at the bottom worked just as hard as the people at the top. Maybe harder. In the elevator, alone for a moment, Gabrielle caught her reflection in the polished doors. She barely recognized herself. She wore a tailored navy suit that cost more than her first car. Her hair was styled perfectly. Her makeup was flawless. But it was her eyes that had changed the most. They were no longer sad and broken. They were clear, focused, determined. The elevator opened on the 50th floor. Her executive assistant, a brilliant woman named Grace, met her with a tablet full of updates. Morning, Mrs. Sterling. You have a board meeting at 10, lunch with the mayor at noon, and a conference call with the London office at 3. Gabrielle took the tablet and reviewed the schedule. Push the mayor lunch to tomorrow. I need to review the London proposal before that call. Considered it done. Grace followed her into the office. Also, you received another letter from Andre's lawyer, 5th one this month. Gabrielle didn't even look up. Shred it. He made his choices. Now he gets to live with them. Yes, ma'am. Grace hesitated. There's one more thing. Candace called. She wants to meet with you. Says she wants to apologize. Now Gabrielle looked up. Did she really? I told her you weren't interested, but she was insistent. Said she's changed, found religion, wants to make amends. Gabrielle almost laughed. Let me guess. Her new husband's tech company went bankrupt and now she needs a job. Grace smiled. Forbes reported that exact story yesterday. Of course they did. Gabrielle walked to the window overlooking the city. Tell Candace that Sterling Global Resorts has no positions available for her. Not now, not ever. And if she calls again, we'll consider it harassment. Understood. As Grace left, Gabrielle stood alone in her office, the same office her father worked in for 30 years. His desk, his view, his company, now hers. She thought about Andre sitting in a prison cell, probably still convinced he'd done nothing wrong. She thought about his family struggling to pay bills without sterling money supporting them. She thought about Candace desperately trying to latch onto her next wealthy target. And she felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no regret, just peace. Because Gabrielle had learned the most important lesson of all. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need to destroy the people who hurt her. Karma had done that work for her. All she needed to do was walk away with her dignity intact and build something beautiful from the ashes of their betrayal. Her father taught her that. Quiet strength. Real strength. She opened her email and started working on the London proposal. Sterling Global Resorts was expanding into 10 new countries this year. By next year, they'd be the largest luxury resort company in the world. And Gabrielle would be the one leading that charge. Not the broken woman who stood silent at her father's funeral while her husband kissed his mistress. Not the scared girl who let people call her a disgrace in her own home. But the CEO, the billionaire, the woman who turned her greatest pain into her greatest power, the woman who built her own throne from the ashes of their betrayal, the woman her father always knew she could be. And that's how Gabrielle turned her greatest pain into her greatest power. See you in the next one.